guys, welcome back to another one of my monthly reading recap videos. So we're going to be going through all the books that I read during April. This is them here. I read 6 books in April. Now that's not normally as many as I would have read in previous months. Normally I read anywhere between 8 to 12 books a month. So it was only 6 this month. But as you can see, these are some thick books. Like these are all like 700 to 1,000 page long books. So they took a lot longer to read than some of the smaller books, but we're going to get into them now. Okay, so I started the month of April finishing the Throne of Glass series. So I had just finished the first 5 books in the Throne of Glass series. So I just finished Queen of Shadows. And then to start the month off of April, I did the tandem read where I read Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn at the same time. So these 2 books you read in tandem. There is a reading guide online that you can Google which tells you the correct order of how to read these books. So basically I just went in and I marked when I needed to swap to each book. So you kind of read a few chapters at a time and go back and forth between these books until they're done. So this took me about a week and a half to get through both of these as I was reading them at the same time. But I am very, very glad that I did the tandem read instead of reading one and the other. I feel like the tandem read just made it a much more enjoyable experience because in Empire Storms, we're still following the main character. We're still following Aline and the rest of them and the sort of the main plot of the story. And then this book is kind of fleshing out the character development of Kale and some of the other characters, and you're introduced to a lot of new characters in this book. It's set in a different part of the world that they're in, and you get a lot more information that kind of ties into Empire of Storms. So we find out a lot of information in this book that is relevant to the series going forward. So they take place at the exact same time in different areas of the world, and I'm very, very glad I read them. And both of these books were 5 stars for me. I personally loved Tower of Dawn. A lot of people talk about how they don't really like this book that much because they don't like Kale. Kale is actually one of my favorite characters in the series, and this was such a great redemption arc for him. I already liked him going into this book. I thought he was very human and he had very normal emotions, but he just had a lot of internal work to be done, a lot of demons that he kind of had to conquer, and I loved his healing arc in this story. I also loved Nesrin's character and all the new characters we're introduced to, but Irene is one of my favorite characters in this whole series, and just getting to see more of her and seeing more of her character and understanding who she is and getting, chapters from her point of view was really, really great. So I love Tower of Dawn. Empire of Storm, a lot of shit goes down in this book, but it was fantastic. I love Aline. I love the whole crew that she's with. I don't know, there was just so much going on in this book, and it's just leading us up to the final book, and it was just action-packed, and it just made me fall in love with a lot more characters. Fenris, fell in love with Fenris in this book. I absolutely adore him. But yeah, both of these books were 5 stars for me. My 3rd book of April was the final book in the Throne of Glass series, which is Kingdom of Ash. This beautiful book right here, big book. She's about 1,000 pages. This is probably the best book I've ever read. I think this is my favorite book of all time that I've ever read in my entire life. I love this book. This was fucking fantastic. I was never bored. There was so much going on. Obviously, we're in the heat of the war now, and all of our characters are reuniting after, the tandem read and after they've been split apart. The beginning of this book, like, emotionally was just so hard to get through, with Aline being captured and then her and Fenris bonding. That was some of my favorites. Like, they weren't even 2 characters that I anticipated on having such a great bond. And they are my favorite friendship in the whole series, and I really fell in love with them. Some of the scenes in this book, like the action scenes, like with Elide saving Lorcan on the horse, which is later in the book, I was literally sitting on the edge of my seat, and I just couldn't even describe how this book made me feel, especially scenes like that. And there were just so many scenes like that, and I was an emotional wreck throughout this book with a few scenes. I don't want to spoil too much in case you haven't read it, but literally the best book I've ever read. If I could give this more than 5 stars, I would, but this is a 5-star read. Changing up the genres a bit, the next book I read in April was Atomic Habits. This is a personal development book. Obviously, by the title, it is basically just easy, proven ways to build good habits and break bad habits. This was a nice little interval for me between obviously finishing an epic fantasy series before starting the next one. I have listened to the audiobook of this before, but I've never actually physically read it. I find that when I physically read books, I just retain a lot more of the knowledge. This is a great little middle book for me. I really enjoyed it. I got a lot of really great tips out of it, and if you're looking to build some better habits in your life, really recommend this book. It's a great read and quite an easy read as well. It's very to the point. Now, getting back on the Sarah J Maas train. I'm a big Sarah J Maas fan, in case you haven't seen. So Basically, Sarah J Maas's book, so ACOTAR, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is what I read in January, the Throne of Glass series, which I just finished reading during the month of April, and then we go into the Crescent City series. These are all her series, and they're actually a multiverse, so they all tie in with each other, so you have to read all 3 of the series. I chose to read Crescent City last, so this is the next book I read, which is Crescent City. Now, she's a big book. This is the first one in the duology so far. There's going to be more books, but there's only 2 published. Oh, here's my cat. This was great. A little bit slow paced for me in the beginning. It's a lot of world building. Obviously, it's a brand new world, and there's a lot going on, a lot of characters to introduce, a lot of lore. You got to understand the world. So the first sort of 150 to 200 pages were a lot of world building, and I'm not going to lie, it did take a little bit of time for me to get through that, to kind of really get my attention. But once we kind of got into the middle of this book, oh my God, was it good. And I fell in love with the characters. I love Hunt so much. I'm obsessed with him as a character, and I love Bryce as the main female character. I just think she is so much more human, and she's a lot more relatable, as, you know, normal girls in our society can relate to her. Crescent City is the only one out of these 3 series from Sarah J Maas that is kind of set in a more modern time, so they have technology, which is really interesting, considering that it is a fantasy book, and there's obviously fae and, you know, wolves and things like that, and magic and powers. To be set in a modern sort of time with technology was quite interesting, when all the others are sort of set when they didn't have that technology. So I really, really did enjoy that aspect of the book. The ending of this book, however, Sarah J Maas does this with all of her books. The last sort of 200 to 150 pages, the last ones of those, shit just goes down. You cannot put the book down, and it's fucking amazing. Like, everything just happens in the last 150 pages. This was no different. Absolutely loved. And if you've read it, the vacuuming scene, that won't make sense to you if you haven't read it, but so good. But this was 4.5 stars for me, just because it was a little bit slow to get into. The 6th and final book that I read in April was the sequel, House of Sky and Breath. So this is the 2nd book in the Crescent City series. This book was so fucking good. I love this book. Again, a little bit slower paced in the beginning, took me a little bit of time. But again, the ending, I was so invested by the time I got to the end. And the ending, it ties all of Sarah J Maas's series together. So ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, and now Crescent City, they're all tied together, and that's where we kind of realize that it's a multiverse. But I don't want to spoil anything, but I wish I filmed my reaction when I was reading the last chapter of this book, because I literally had to just put the book down and I just stared at the wall for like an hour. I was in disbelief when I finished this book at just what happened in the last chapter. I've never been so shocked by a book in my whole life, like in a good way, but it's just so exciting, and I cannot wait for the next books to come out. The next one of this comes out in January. I'm so excited, but yeah, another big book, but this was a 5-star read for me. I thought it was brilliant, obsessed with it, and Sarah J Maas is officially my favorite author. And I actually got a little tattoo dedicated to the Crescent City series. So it's still healing, but this one here, it says light it up. That's one of the phrases in the book. So that's my little tattoo for the Crescent City series. And then the Throne of Glass series that I was reading through April as well, I'm booked in to get a tattoo of that on my bicep. So in my next video that I make, I should have that tattoo, which means I will have a tattoo for every single one of Sarah J Maas's series, from ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, and Crescent City, because I'm obsessed. But yeah, that was all the books that I read in April, 6 books total, but they were some big, big books and a lot going on, and I had a fucking great time reading them, and I'm obsessed. We're in May right now. I'm currently already on track. I'm onto my 4th book of May so far. It's the 11th of May today. I'm a little bit late making this video, but I'm just obsessed. I am loving the series that I'm reading at the moment, and I'm really enjoying talking about them and making these videos with you guys. So even if you haven't read any of these books, I hope it encourages you to pick them up and read them, because fantasy is just the best genre, and more people should be reading fantasy, in my opinion. But that concludes my April reading month recap video, and I'm hoping to see you in a video soon. I've got a book haul video coming very shortly, so I'll see you in the next video. Mwah. Bye, guys.